stories. They are so much more than once upon a time and they all lived happily ever after. Stories are as much a part of human nature and behavior as breathing. And like air, stories are ubiquitous and seldom consciously considered. People use the word story to refer to everything from explaining behavior, what's her story, to expressing the truth of a situation. Here's the real story. Stories are also used to explain the origin of cultures, to define personal and group identities, to communicate tradition and ethical behavior, and to sell everything from running shoes and religious doctrine to political ideologies and societal norms. Now, since we are primarily interested in one particular story, and that's the one in your head that you refer to as me and I, when I use the word story, I will not be using it as a simple statement of fact, a description or account of some happening. For example, let's say you leave your job to do something different, or you break up with your significant other, or let's say you quit drinking or stop doing drugs. You may say, I've decided to change my story, or to rewrite my story. No, you have not. The reality is you're not rewriting anything, because the past does not exist like the written pages in an unpublished novel that you can go back and change. It's simply a bunch of stories you carry around in your head. And by the way, so is the future. They're mental constructions. What you've really done when you make a change in your life is you describe a new personal happening. And happenings only become stories when you weave them together in your mind, adding past or future events, characters, and emotions into a causally connected and meaning-infused fiction. And it's that self-important, gripping mental illusion that we're interested in. Because it's that story, the fictional movie in your mind, that dictates your perceptions, your feelings, your thoughts, and ultimately your decisions and life experiences. Our intention is to fully describe that hidden mental movie, that air to you, so that you're aware of it and truly sense its significance to your well-being. Because like air, you're typically only aware of it when it's out of control, when you experience a crisis like a hurricane or emphysema, when the air is overwhelming or inadequate, or, in the case of your personal story, when you experience a certain level of desperation like a serious illness, divorce, bankruptcy, the loss of a loved one, a job loss, or some other crisis. Okay, the best place to start is always at the beginning. So let's take a look at why our brains are wired to think in stories and why we believe that we are the main characters in a really serious one. But before I do, let me make a few things clear. First, I am not anti-story. To the contrary, I love stories and storytelling. All of the great ones are trying to tell people how to live, how to be fiercely authentic. Hell, these life-changing philosophies emerge while writing one of those stories. What I am is anti-personal narrative. The idea that you are the hero in your own story and that everything and everyone in life is somehow centered around you. Because a story about yourself is no more you than a description of you as you, whether your mind creates it or someone else's does. And second, this personal narrative illusion is a powerful and persistent result of both nature and nurture, which you must continually fight against. Because to give in and imagine that you can create or rewrite your story will not only make you feel self-conscious and insecure, but it also assumes that life is predictable and that it will play out the way you decide to write it. And as the old saying goes, you plan, God laughs. So, back to the start again. Somewhere between 50 and 200,000 years ago, language emerged. Now, no one really knows when because language doesn't leave fossil traces. In any event, our ancestors developed the ability to use words and signs to represent objects, actions, feelings, ideas. So instead of learning through direct experience what works and what doesn't in the world, what to do and what not to do to survive in a hostile physical and social environment, we shared and internalized the emotion-infused stories conveyed to us by others. Like, be careful, Goog was torn limb from limb by a monstrous beast when she wandered into that field. Or, we don't know what happened to Ugg. He disappeared after an angry encounter with Gak. Okay, you get my point. Naturally, our minds became wired with these emotional cause and effect accounts of life, primarily to help us survive, to stay safe and in good standing with our tribe. They provided us with explanations for why things are the way they are and with information to help us predict how they'll most likely be in the future. Don't eat those green berries. Wait for them to turn red. And please just trust me and don't say that to Gak. Not now. You see, like all animals, our perceptions and feelings are what inform and lead us to get us to avoid or approach things in our environment, either potential threats or opportunities to our physical or social well-being. And those feelings are encoded in memory through both genetics and experience. For example, both humans and rats will jump back if they see a snake or think that they see one. But unlike rats, our memories are also encoded with feelings through cultural conditioning, socially transmitted beliefs and behaviors. And the repeated exposure to those dramatic stories told to us by others about snakes or sharks or, tax examiners, relationships, berries, you name it. It wired us to store that information and then to retrieve it by time traveling in our minds in imagining various scenarios. Vivid mental movies that animate those feelings. And why? Again, in order to help us appraise situations and make rapid predictions so that we remain safe and comfortable. Now, as a consequence of constructing and reconstructing those mental movies and playing them over and over and over again, we have necessarily turned into the feeling-driven central characters of the movie we refer to as us and life. We've come to see ourselves and our situations as the plot of the story, the why for what's important. As well as everything that happens in the world. But the world as it has been described to us is not the world as it is. We've been conditioned to screen out 99% of it and focus only on what we have defined as relevant. Whatever our feelings tell us may have good or bad consequences is what we focus on. And even after taking that very narrow and prejudiced view, we can't even remember experiences accurately. Rather, we remember the most painful and pleasurable happenings in order to avoid them or seek them out in the future. I mean, memory is kind of like dragging a net through the ocean. When you pull it up, most of the ocean escapes through the holes. All that remains are a few fish and a bunch of junk. It's exactly how a screenplay is written as well. As someone once said, drama is life with the dull bits cut out. What are the dull parts? The songs of a nightingale, the fragrance of a rainy day, the feeling of sand between your toes. You see, the stories told to us and the ones we hold on to, that educational process, is not designed to expose us to the truth of life, nor is it optimized to make us happy, but rather it evolved to help us survive and spread our genes, period. Interestingly, studies have shown that people who have lost their plot, their memories, often become happier, freely flowing in the present without history or trajectory, like little children who have no past to create a narrative identity and fill them with self-conscious thoughts. Various psychiatric interventions to treat chronic depression and post-traumatic stress disorder, like electroconvulsive therapy, psychoactive drugs, they're also believed to make people feel safe and happier by disconnecting various memories from their movie-making minds. And some of the happiest people are also those who become aware that they have little time left to live and have therefore let go of their narratives and their irrational fears of their uncertain futures and what other people might think of them. Look, for most of us, our memories and projections are us. And so we continuously mull over and over what needs to be done or avoided in order to stay in the know, stay safe and accepted, to keep things predictable and orderly. And if we work really hard, and we're fortunate, to help us succeed as well. And everything and everyone that we experience simply becomes a means to that end. Components of our invented dramas, scripts, scenery, props, supporting characters, villains. As the Jesuit priest Anthony de Mello once wrote, we see people and things not as they are, but as we are. Or, rather, as we think we are, in the moment, in the delusional movie in our heads. Now, this mental illusion does have its benefits. It creates a unique and solid sense of self, your narrative identity, as well as a feeling of coherence and meaning. It's a way for you to feel that you are substantial and significant, and that you have a sense of control and direction in your life. It also allows you to know how to project your character to others, which we'll dive more deeply into in a future session. In fact, conventional wisdom treats this mental construct, this human self model, as a natural, inescapable fact of life. I mean, we're led to believe that it's simply how our minds work. I mean, Oliver Sacks, one of the world's most famous neurologists, wrote, "Each of us constructs and lives a narrative, and this narrative is us." In the same vein, brain researcher Michael Gazzaniga has viewed the self as the product of stories we tell about ourselves. Do you see this? This sentiment is shared by renowned psychologists like Dan McAdams, who says that we are all storytellers and we are the stories we tell. And philosophers like J. David Velleman, who writes, "We invent ourselves, but we really are the characters we invent." Most people also see this way of thinking, this arising of mental phenomena to see life as a story in which we star, as a positive trait. like many personal coaches and motivational speakers. And I tell you what, I must confess, I used to believe that very same thing. No, I'm not kidding. In my 2014 TED Talk, I proclaimed in an empowering way that we embody our roles, our values, our stories. We live in those stories and we live according to them. I mean, I was basically saying that we become the stories we tell ourselves. And this reality is a good thing. Well, guess what? I discovered through my movie writing experience and peculiar conversations with the universe that I was dead wrong. It may sound like a good thing, conscious, considered, and voluntary, but in reality, it's a passive, involuntary, and very limiting and dangerous mental construct. The stories we unconsciously tell end up becoming us, which is antithetical to living a full and empowered life. In fact, it is the primary cause of both our personal and societal suffering. And in the following sections, we'll examine precisely why, as well as map the steps you can take to escape from your suffocating drama. But before we do, let's consider an important point. Why do you like living in a story? Or more importantly, do you like living in a story? Do you even know that you are living in a story? You see, yes, you live in a story, a movie in your head, because you've been conditioned to live that way through both nature and nurture. You can't help it yet. And yes, you like it for the same reason that Australians like Vegemite, which I can't figure out. But basically it's because it's familiar and comforting. You have come to believe that your personal movie is reality, that it's the way things are, which provides a sense of purpose and structure and meaning. And it's that unconscious assumption which causes you to live your life on autopilot, hyper-focused on your day-to-day problem solving and goal attainment in order to keep your little world, the plot of your story, safe, predictable, and under control, seemingly. And that is precisely what I discovered while deconstructing dozens of movies and writing my own screenplay. Movies are all about heroes and villains, goals and conflict. Problems. As the novelist John le Carré puts it, the cat sat on the mat is not a story. The cat sat on the dog's mat. Now that's a story. You see, here's how it works. The hero is typically living an ordinary existence, like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, when she is suddenly confronted with a problem or challenge, or in fiction and screenwriting lingo, an inciting incident. In Dorothy's case, a tornado whisks her away from home and drops her in an unknown land, taking her out of her dream state, her personal narrative, and forcing her to see reality in a new way. So, this sets her off on a journey where she's confronted with fears and doubts, encounters friends and enemies, and runs into obstacles and setbacks. She undergoes some major ordeal or setback, and eventually she arrives home a transformed person with a feeling of accomplishment, a truer understanding of life, and a sense of relief and harmony. There's no place like home. And that is exactly how your brain has been wired through evolution. You wake up in the morning and unconsciously take on the hero role in your personal movie. And without even being aware of it, you set off on a journey of ups and downs, right and wrong, good and bad. It's a fiction invented by your brain to help you survive. And like a movie, It needs desires and goals to set it in motion, in conflicts and obstacles to keep it going. Do you see? Again, you're not aware of this. It's not something that you think about. It's like saying that the sun is setting because it looks like it's setting. You know, it's not. You know that, right? You're spinning. And at about, 1,000 miles an hour. See, if you were aware, you'd wake up from this daydream. You'd become transformed and feel at home with yourself, like Dorothy. For as she finally discovered, freedom is directly proportional to consciousness. The more aware you are of the movie in your head, of why you're feeling and acting the way that you do, the more you can live life on your terms. Instead, you simply think that your story is life, and so you play that movie over and over again. You get up each morning and mechanically repeat the same fundamental behaviors, feelings, thoughts as the day before. So your personal yellow brick road is one big roundabout. And to make it easy and safe, you keep it predictable, right? And orderly by keeping it on cruise control and staying in your lane, consistent with your past performances. That way, you don't bump into anyone or have to use your conscious attention. So you drive the same way to work, you dress the same, you order the same coffee from the same local cafe, you hang around with the same people, you read the same magazines and websites, and all because your mind is telling you that you're that type of person. It's your character. It's you. So even if you don't genuinely enjoy what you're doing or totally agree with it, the rhythms of the familiar, your script, lull you into a routine, and your powerful mental movie keeps you hypnotized, lost in your role. Look, there's a big difference between what you like and what you do. I mean, take a look at all the bumper stickers on people's cars broadcasting that they'd rather be golfing or fishing or doing anything other than what they're actually doing. Or simply ask any spiritless employee or frustrated freelancer. What you do is dictated not by what you like, but by what you, as the protagonist of your movie, subconsciously believe you should be doing to keep you and those in your particular drama safe and undisturbed. Happily ever after. If only, right? So you can see that you are living in a story, obsessively looking for problems and imagining a happily ever after that never comes. Now you probably can't see it, just like you're not aware that you're breathing. Do you enjoy living unconsciously in your story? Well, I suppose that depends, right? If your story allows you to breathe naturally and peacefully, then you probably consider it okay. I mean, after all, what more do you know, right? But that doesn't mean that you are living fully or that your hero role is bringing that same mental calm to others. And if you are confused or anxious or depressed, struggling to breathe peacefully, then your story is likely strangling the life out of you. And if it is, the first thing you need to do is become conscious of it. And then you can slowly pry your hypnotized hands from your own throat. Make no mistake, this awakening is not for the faint of heart. To become conscious of your story, you must observe and investigate your feelings, your thoughts, and your actions, and fight through several stubborn influences. First, and as I've already pointed out, your brain is naturally wired to create stories. I mean, it's a relentless movie producer. with the simple plot being all about comfort and survival. Second, the source material that animates those stories and informs your feelings come from your evolutionary instincts and your social conditioning. In addition, those influential stories are being continually reinforced with newly acquired perceptions of the world. Perceptions that are created through your prejudice experiences and stored and reinforced as biased memories, as your reality. We'll explore exactly how that works in a later session. It's really interesting. And to top it all off, those stories are comforting. And the people around you, they're going to help you reinforce those stories because it makes them and you feel that life makes sense and that everything is under control. So, as I've hopefully made clear right at the outset, trying to get you to see this reality and to accept that it's a problem may be a fool's errand. I don't know. I mean, it requires me to give you all that I've got, to be brutally honest and to not hold back the truth of existence. And you must be extremely thick-skinned and possess a tenacity for being curious and questioning what your mind is telling you. But I'm hopeful that what's behind the curtain will become crystal clear so that you too can understand yourself and escape your limiting story. Now, in the next few sections, we'll examine the negative consequences of living in a personal narrative, and I'll explain why more and more people in modern societies are strangling themselves with this dangerous illusion. As we move forward, please remember, and I'm going to keep telling you this, you are not a character in a story defined by an imaginary past. And you are not alone. But only you can decide if you want to keep going and truly evaluate how you are presently living, and more importantly, how you are willing to live. To discover how to do what you really want to do and to do it in harmony with your inner self.